When sight turns into sound and sound into insight, you're truly exploring vision. A podcast by Novar.
All right, let's dive in. Today, we're tackling myopia control.
Sounds good.
Specifically, we're going to be looking at the use of atropine.
Okay.
So we're unpacking this presentation by Dr. María Ines Perez Flores.
Right.
She's a Spanish ophthalmologist who's been doing some really interesting research on atropine.
Yeah, it's a hot topic for sure. Yeah.
So it's not just like, a basic how to use atropine. She kind of takes a critical look at the research.
Yeah.
And points out maybe where things don't quite line up between what the studies are saying and how atropine is being used, in practice.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So, she kind of starts by acknowledging the elephant in the room, the hype. I mean, everyone's talking about atropine. It's like the potential solution for slowing down myopia in kids.
Right.
And the research is piling up. 267 publications in the last 2 years alone.
Wow, that's a lot.
I know. It's wild. But she's kind of like, hold on a second. Let's not just jump on this bandwagon without really thinking it through.
Right. Yeah, looking at the details.
The nuances.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, she observes that a lot of practitioners are still, really relying on a lot of that early research, a lot of which came out of Asia.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's great. That laid the groundwork. But there are more recent studies that are kind of like, wait, hold on a second. It's a little more complex than we thought.
Right. We're getting a better picture now.
Exactly. And that leads us to like the big question mark, atropine dosage.
Yeah.
It's like every time you think you understand it, there's another study.
Right.
It's like, well, wait a minute.
More questions than answers.
Totally. So one of the things that she brings up is this long-term Spanish study that showed like really impressive results with low-dose atropine, specifically 0.01%.
Okay.
But, and here's the catch, the control group in that study had like slower myopia progression that was expected.
Interesting. So that makes it hard to interpret the findings.
Exactly. Like, was it really the atropine, that was doing all the heavy lifting?
Right. Yeah.
Or was it just that the control group was like, unusually resistant to myopia?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, right?
Definitely. Are there inconsistencies across studies?
Oh, for sure. And she even brings up her own 2-year study, which found more moderate results.
Okay.
But, and this is important, her study didn't have a control group.
Right. So you can't directly compare.
Exactly.
Got it. And then you have like the REPCA study, which also done over 2 years, low-dose atropine, no significant benefit over a placebo.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, what's going on?
Right. Makes your head spin.
Totally. And just when you think you're starting to kind of wrap your head around it, the CHAMP study
Oh, yeah.
throws a curveball.
Tell me about it.
0.02% atropine. Didn't work. But 0.01% worked.
It's like, pick a number.
Right. So, I mean, clearly finding the right dose is not like a straightforward thing.
It's not a magic bullet, is it?
No magic bullet. And this is where, this idea of personalized treatment that she keeps hammering home
Right.
really comes into play.
Really important.
You can't just be like, oh, well, the study said this, so this is what we're going to do.
Absolutely.
Like, there's a lot of factors, right? The kid's age, how bad their myopia is.
Even their genetics, potentially.
A puzzle.
It really is. And Dr. Perez Flores is like putting the pieces together.
She is. And she even talks about this ongoing Spanish trial that's combining atropine with these special lenses called DIMS.
Oh, yeah, the DIMS.
Yeah. So these things, they create like a blur in your peripheral vision. And some researchers think that might help slow down myopia.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's still ongoing.
Yeah.
But after a year, the combo, atropine plus DIMS, only showed an advantage in slowing down like how fast the eyeball elongates.
Okay.
Not in reducing the myopia itself.
Oh, so it's still early days.
It is. We're just like at the beginning of understanding how all these different approaches work together.
Right, both individually and in combination.
Totally.
Yeah.
And, of course, we can't forget about the long term, right? Dr. Perez Flores, she took a deep dive into the ATOM-1 and ATOM-2 studies.
Right, the landmark studies.
Yes. 10 years and 20 years.
Wow.
So the long view. And what's really surprising is that those long-term studies showed no lasting benefit compared to no treatment at all.
That is surprising.
It is. And then to make things even more complicated, there's the possibility of myopia rebound if you like stop atropine treatment suddenly.
Oh, wow. So that really changes things.
It does, right.
Yeah.
Like, if there's no long-term benefit, is atropine even worth it?
Right. What's the point?
Right, but
Yeah.
she doesn't think it's a dead end.
Okay, so what's her take?
She thinks these findings are like a wake-up call, that we need to be thinking about atropine as part of a long-term plan, not just like a quick fix.
So maybe adjusting the dosages or combining it with other therapies over time.
Exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
I like that. We need to be ready for the long haul.
We do. But, okay, before we get too deep into those long-term strategies, I want to go back to some of the other research she's been doing, because this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears.
Okay, so remember how we were talking about some studies showing less or even no effect with atropine?
Yeah.
Well, she found something really interesting. A common factor in some of those U.S. studies.
Mm-hmm.
They were all using this specific multi-dose formula
Okay.
with preservatives, a low pH, and no BAC system.
Right. The BAC system, that's that special delivery system.
Right, for better absorption.
Yeah, I remember.
So she thinks those factors, the preservatives, the low pH, the lack of a BAC system, might actually be hindering how well the atropine gets absorbed.
Wow, that's fascinating. Like, it's there, but it can't get to where it needs to be.
Exactly, like a locked safe.
I see, yeah.
And then, okay, this is the really wild part. This came from her own research. 25% of her patients on low-dose atropine, they actually showed a decrease in eyeball length between visits.
Whoa, wait, a decrease?
Yeah, a decrease.
That's unexpected. How is that even possible?
I know, right? It's like they're defying the odds.
Measurement error, maybe?
Maybe. Or like some weird individual biology thing.
Or something we haven't even thought of yet.
Right. It's a total mystery. But, as exciting as this is, she's like, hold on, guys. More research is needed.
Yeah, of course. One study doesn't tell the whole story.
Totally. But it does bring us back to that whole personalized treatment thing.
Yeah, her big takeaway.
There is no one-size-fits-all. You got to look at the individual kid. What do they need?
Absolutely. And how those needs change over time, too.
Exactly. So, work with your eye doctor. Be proactive.
Not just, here's the protocol, follow it.
Right. And it goes beyond just checking the prescription.
Yeah, like what else?
She's big on monitoring the physical structure of the eye,
Okay.
like the choroid.
Ah, the choroid. That's the layer that nourishes the retina, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Super important for good vision.
Right. Makes sense.
So, okay, big picture time. What does all this mean for our listeners? They're out there trying to figure out this whole myopia control thing.
It's a lot to take in, for sure.
It is. What are Dr. Perez Flores' big takeaways? What should they be thinking about?
Well, first off, be an informed patient. Do your research.
Don't just blindly trust everything you hear.
Right. Ask questions. Have those conversations with your eye doctor. Don't be afraid to really understand what's going on.
Advocate for your child's eye health.
Exactly. And be ready for the long game. Myopia management, this isn't a quick fix.
It's a journey, like we said.
And there might be adjustments along the way. Dosages might change. Therapies might change.
Totally. And remember, we're still learning. There's so much we don't know about myopia.
Right. The science is always evolving.
But hey, that's part of what makes it so exciting.
It does. Always something new to discover.
Exactly. So stay curious, keep asking questions, and, keep up with the research. The more we learn, the better equipped we are to make good decisions for our kids.
Exactly. So Dr. Perez Flores' presentation, super insightful, lots to think about.
Yeah.
And speaking of things to think about, I keep coming back to the shrinking eyeballs.
Oh, yeah. That's a real head scratcher. What could be going on there?
Is it a fluke? Is it something more significant?
She didn't have any answers, but she definitely got us thinking.
And that's the beauty of science, right? Always more to explore, always more to learn. Makes you realize just how much is still, up in the air when it comes to myopia and how we treat it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we started talking about atropine dosage like it was a simple thing.
Right, just figure out the right dose and you're good to go.
Exactly. But it turns out it's way more complicated. And I think that's what's really important about what Dr. Perez Flores is saying. We gotta, stay humble.
Humble.
Yeah, recognize that we don't have all the answers. Not even close. There's still so much to learn about myopia. But that's also what makes it so exciting,
Yeah, there's a sense of, discovery.
Totally. We're on the edge of something new, something big, moving away from these cookie cutter solutions.
Yeah, one size fits all.
Exactly. Towards something more, tailored, personalized.
Nuanced.
That's the word. And that's gotta be empowering, not just for the eye doctors, but for the families too.
Right. It puts the focus back on the individual kid.
What does this kid need?
Not just like, what does the protocol say?
And it makes that relationship between the eye doctor and the family, it makes it more of a partnership.
I like that. A partnership. You know, I think it's interesting. Dr. Perez Flores didn't shy away from all the unknowns.
Yeah, all the question marks.
She was like, hey, here's what we know. Here's what we don't know. Let's keep digging.
Yeah, she embraces the complexity. It's not like she's saying, oh, this is all figured out, I've got the answer.
Right. It's more like, come on, let's figure this out together.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important reminder. Science isn't about having all the answers.
It's about the process.
The journey, asking the questions, testing the ideas, always learning more.
It's a good note to end on, I think. You know, stay curious, keep asking those questions, don't be afraid to challenge what you think you know.
And who knows, maybe we'll be the ones to make the next big breakthrough in myopia management.
Well, that's it for this deep dive into atropine and myopia control. We covered a lot of ground today. Hopefully you learned something new.
And hopefully you're feeling a little bit more, well, hopeful about the future of myopia management.
Right. Like, there's a lot we still don't know, but there are brilliant people out there working on it. And there's reason to be optimistic. So thanks for joining us on this journey.
It's been fun.
It has. And if you found this interesting, share it with your friends, share it with your family. Let's get everyone talking about myopia. Until next time, stay curious.
You've just listened to Exploring Vision, an AI-driven podcast by Novar. Subscribe and be part of our next journey as we uncover fresh insights into vision.